Okay, final stage wrap up. Hitting some high spots in 5 and 6. And here's what 5 and 6 really do for us. Chapter 5 and Chapter 6 allow us to see how 1, 3, 2, 4 with an overlay of 8 all come together when it specifically relates to anaerobic and aerobic training. So if you'll remember, we covered all of this because you already know it. Of all the systems to arrive on the scene first to create change, what's first? The nervous system. There's a really neat chart on page 89 where it actually talks about the phosphagen system, the glycolytic, and the aerobic system. This is a revisit of when we were talking about bioenergetics earlier in the semester in a previous chapter. So this chart, where's it come into focus, is actually just another thing for you to look at as a reminder of which sports fall into which category. It's a great reminder. On page 90, there's a great chart in your book that reminds us of the different performance adaptations, the fiber changes, the metabolic energy systems, connective tissue changes, and body fat percentages that change whenever we Fab 5 train. Whenever we Fab 5 train over on the right-hand side of the line, or we do power training, we do plyometric training, our body makes these specific adaptations because the body will respond to whatever you ask it to. So remember those things. This is whenever we start to talk about selective recruitment. And the example that we talked about in our book is on page 91. Motor neurons are typically recruited from small to large. If you will remember the example of me picking up the pen off of the desk versus me picking up the desk, when you're wanting a little job done, your body will select those little neurons. When you're wanting a big job to be done, your body will let you selectively recruit. And friends, that's on page 91. It will let you selectively recruit which of the motor neuron fibers are going to make that happen. We know that with heavy resistance training, we see muscular hypertrophy going on because the larger motor units are involved. That's in the bottom right-hand corner of page 91. We mentioned myotactic reflex. This is on page 92. This is when we talk about reflex potentiation. Remember we talked about the power of plantar flexion. How many sports are we involved in where we don't plantar flex? I have yet to figure out an answer to that question. So if I can teach my athlete to powerfully plantar flex through that soleus, they're going to become more powerful. It's kind of interesting that that soleus muscle that we don't give enough credit to takes on such a big job. I think I used the example of it being the slingshot of mobility. You remember you talking about the wrist rocket slingshot? Yes or no? Yes? That soleus has that ability to propel us forward by divine design. It's amazing. Hey, what is muscular hypertrophy? An individual cell getting bigger and stronger. We see those muscle fibers being added on to the exterior. Each muscle fiber gets bigger. We talked about the difference between hypertrophy and hyperplasia. Hyperplasia is whenever one muscle cell gets so big it actually explodes. But that's not what we want. That doesn't necessarily mean stronger, bigger, faster, more efficient, and effective. On page 95, and I know this is backwards from the way that we have learned it, there actually is a fiber continuum chart there in that right-hand column. I think it's crazy that they teach it one way in this book and then they put this diagram in here differently. You need to understand, if you flip this, your type 2X fibers are way over here. They are the most explosive ones that come into play. Hey, don't cross the line. Once a type 2 muscle fiber is a type 2 muscle fiber, it always is. Now, can it take on characteristics of being more aerobic? Yes or yes? Yes. because your body will respond to whatever you ask it to. We start to talk about bone physiology and mechanical overloading and osteoblast. This is all on page 97. Whenever we Fab 5 train our skeletal system, we have these osteoblasts migrate to the surface. They help form a more rigid cortical bone. Okay? Do you remember what MES was? Minimal essential strain. Which means if we can just get people to do more NEAT training, more weight-bearing exercise, we can increase bone mineral density. We can prevent osteoporosis, we can stave osteopenia, and we can keep people with good levels of bone mineral density. What else we got in that chapter? Y'all help me. Hey, what is specificity of loading?
Increase bone mineral density by specifically loading the bones.
So if I want my bone mineral density in my hip joints to stay strong, do I need to, I'm going to give you 4 choices here, okay? Do I need to for A, B, C, or D. Here are your options. Don't say anything until you hear them all. The goal is to improve bone mineral density specifically in the hip. Choice A is swimming. Choice B is walking. Choice C is a leg extension machine. Choice D is a lat pull machine. Which one do I need to do?
Walking.
B, walking. Why? I'm specifically loading what? Loading the hip joint. So it can go through that whole thing where it's getting progressively instead of aggressively overloaded. Okay? Here's the thing. Is swimming great for your body? Yes. But is swimming really the best thing for your skeleton? No. Because you're not getting that intensity with it. We talk about progressive overload. We talk about an athlete stimulating bone formation. Know a few ways how to do that. We always want to build peak bone mass. Hey, when do you stop building peak bone mass? You're there. Not quite yet. You guys, in your early 20s, you typically stop building your peak bone mass that you're going to carry with you the rest of your life. So be sure you do that. What are some of the functions of cartilage in our body? Absorb shock, smooth articulating surface, and stay connected. Kinesiology secret handshake, without a doubt. So this starts to talk about receptor changes after this. Hey, what does chronic mean? Over time. What does acute mean? Stand up. Okay. So talk to me about your cardiovascular system. You may sit down. Real quick. When you talk about your cardiovascular system, tell me some things that happen acutely whenever you start any workout program. What happens to your heart rate? Increases. Blood pressure. Stroke volume. All of these things happen whenever you're starting any kind of exercise program. What are some of the adaptations that happen over time? You have a lower resting heart rate, typically lower blood pressure. You have a larger stroke volume. Remember the example with the sponge? The big sponge or the little sponge? Do you want the big one or the little one? The big sponge. But it's really important in saying that. Okay. That's the old rusty stuff. The chapter 6 stuff that you need to know is still up on YouTube with those videos. We do mention in that one, we do mention bradycardia. We do mention how altitude has those changes. We do know that if you train a type 2 athlete, like a type 1 athlete, they will become more type 1-ish. You know this stuff, friends. Pay attention to what you know. Work on little bits and pieces of what you don't know and build it slow. Start today. Watch these videos. Get on the treadmill, watch, listen, talk to your friends about it. Talk to perfect strangers about progressive overload. Help people carry their groceries, progressive overload. Walk through them in the grocery store and say, hey, 712-555, have a great day. Walk through in the grocery store and say, do you know that you have terrible anterior pelvic tilt? You know what I can do to help you with that? Walk through and say, hey, your posture is terrible. Let's stack you in your beautiful S-curve the way you were divinely designed to be. Don't just use the information for the test. Use the information to make the best. Okay? You're going to do great next week. Little review. I might send you some love notes between now and then. Okay? Everybody good? Don't ask what chapters it is, because it's the whole thing from foundation on. God bless you, friends. I'll see you on Monday and on Tuesday.